right, I see people joining as we are entering. In the interest of time, I'll start with some introductions. Thank you all for attending our session, our webinar about are your people strategies innovative enough? Looking at redesigning the employee experience for 2022 and beyond. My name is Christina Giordano, pronouns she, her, and hers, and I am the Partnerships and Community Manager here at All Voices. For context, if you're not familiar with All Voices, we're an employee feedback management platform that really enables employees to anonymously and safely report things like harassment, bias, culture issues, what have you, directly to company leadership, and then collect that anonymized data and share with company leaders so they can really take action and prevent systemic problems and really help create that psychologically safe place for employees to feel like they could do their best work. For today's conversation, we know that the past 2 years has been really ripe with challenges, and the people or human resources space has been flipped on its head. There's also a huge opportunity to redesign strategies to be more efficient, inclusive, equitable around when, how, and where people work. So just want to thank our panelists for being on this webinar today. And I'll stop talking and go into introductions. If you want to state your name, pronouns, role in the work you do at your company, we'll start with Bertina, and I'll put the order in the chat so you don't have to memorize it as well.
Great. I'm Bertina Yen. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the VP of People and Operations at Evidation Health, and we are a health technology company that measures health in everyday life and enable anyone to participate in groundbreaking research and health programs. I oversee a cross-functional group called the Employee Experience Team, which spans HR, recruiting, IT, admins, culture and community, and facilities.
Great. I guess I'll go next since I'm next in this order here. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Perryman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am currently serving as the Vice President of Human Resources for Spiceworks Ziff Davis. My team and I work on all things end-to-end people. So we're TA, so talent acquisition, talent development, HR operations, strategic HR business partnership for our teams that are across the globe. We're the B2B arm for Ziff Davis, which is publicly traded, headquartered in New York, has a lot of different, more familiar B2C brands that people would be familiar with. But essentially, we work to serve our IT professionals and those that sell IT solutions and want to connect with IT professionals in new and different ways, providing insights in the B2B tech space. So our work is really in supporting all of our employees across a variety of countries and time zones, which I'm sure we'll get into today.
Yes, I'm Austin Nelson. I go as he, him, and I'm the manager of recruiting operations for TextNow, which is the first free cell phone provider. We service a lot of low-income individuals, small business owners, and have seen a lot of growth during the pandemic with teachers needing another cell phone to communicate with students. We have over 200 million downloads, and it's a really interesting product. I encourage everyone to check it out. I come from a higher education background, but have been in the tech space for the past handful of years, and I come from a recruiting background, but at TextNow, I manage the recruiting process from start to finish, the systems our team uses, process designs, the coordinators report to me, as well as manage the co-op internship program and all recruitment marketing.
Awesome. And I am another Austin. This is great. Probably Austin Nelson, you can agree that we rarely run into Austins that are our age. Like if you run by a playground, there's a lot of young Austins these days, but it's fun to meet somebody my age that shares the name. I'm Austin Sailors. Pronouns are he, him, and I run the employee experience design team at Heap Analytics. We are a data analytics company really focused on helping our customers build better digital experiences. And we serve customers like all across different verticals, from education and nonprofit to financial. I mean, pretty much anyone that you can think of that has an online presence could use Heap Analytics to capture all of the data, everything that happens when customers interact with your website, and then give product managers the data that they need to figure out how customers are interacting with their platform. Just really cool. We have this, we have auto capture as one of our unique differentiators, and our entire platform is built on literally capturing all the data, everything that happens, and then helping product managers surface unknown unknowns. And we'll get into this probably a little bit later, but being at a data analytics company is challenging in a lot of ways as like a people person. And I come from a design and psychology background, but it has really stretched me and pushed me to think about a data-driven approach to employee experience design. So excited to talk more.
Awesome. We love a data-driven approach to employee experience, potential employee experience, candidate journey as well. I want to start off the conversation with innovation, a word that's in the title of the webinar. So no matter what piece of the employee experience or candidate experience you kind of touch, I want to kind of share some examples, whether it's recent or over the past 2 years, of how you've really innovated in your organization's talent or people design, because one of the things we want to do with our webinars and just conversations is really open source, share examples of what's working. Ashley, I will pass to you first.
Sure. Thanks, Christina. So in relation to people, I think we're all, like you mentioned at the beginning, we're all trying to get ahead of the curve or be more proactive and kind of anticipate what types of trends we're seeing in the talent marketplace, which I'm sure Austin will touch on in analytics and trying to help everyone to understand in the people space, kind of understand what exactly should be next, kind of in terms of attracting the right types of candidates, evaluating candidates effectively, managing people effectively. And so I think for us at Spiceworks Ziff Davis, we've been piloting quite a few different types of initiatives in order to see what works for our particular employee population. So on the enterprise side of the business, we're over 400 people and we're spread out across like 9 different countries. And so one size does not fit all for all of our functions, for all of our the different demographics that make up our employees in terms of their experience with us as an employer. And so one of the things that we have been piloting is in the management ranks, thinking through how our managers can be more resourced, have more tools at the ready, and be able to have some self-serve in terms of information gathering or resources and tools, but also be more equipped and connected across all of those time zones and countries, et cetera. And so just at the beginning of 2021, we launched an HR hub. So we built a Google site for specifically for all of our employees to access, but inside of the HR hub is a managers tab. And in that people manager space, it's people managers corner. It has all things in relation to like management, how to coach effectively, how to help people to drive time management, how to run your one-on-one more effectively. And it kind of delivers content multimodal. There's little videos, there's PDF worksheets, there's kind of journaling exercises. It points you to external resources with companies that we have partnerships with. It points them towards kind of learning repositories. We have access to Udemy through being an employee at Ziff Davis. We offer Udemy to all employees. So it points you towards management resources that are, again, self-directed, self-paced, self-disciplined learning resources, but it also gives you just answers and interpretation of policies, questions, concerns, and things like that. And so giving managers the information that they need just in the way that they need it, like in the time that they need it and the way that they need it, and not just through pushing of announcements, but really giving them access to manipulate those resources or tools and access them on their time, on their schedule, at their leisure, has been a way that we've been able to kind of up-level our manager experience and help our managers to continue have this like ongoing training experience. And that's proven to be pretty helpful. And then lastly, I'll mention as in addition to the HR hub and the people manager corner, we started monthly people manager roundtables. And so it's one day a month, and it invites all of our people managers across the globe. And it's 3 times it's at 3 different times on the same day of a month. So we schedule it at 9 and 12 and 6. And so you can choose which time you're going to attend, but it's a time for people to connect. They get like a 5-minute HR announcement update push, but then the rest of the 45 minutes is really spent like career, people connecting, personal connections, having greater conversations, helping us to establish greater personal networking connection across the business, and helping us to solve problems together.
I love it. It sounds like a lot of operationalizing resources, helping managers, making sure they have the proper training, and also asynchronous work too, and meeting people where they are. Bertina, what about you in terms of innovation and meeting your team where they are?
Absolutely. And +1 to everything Ashley said on manager training and manager community. I've been focused a lot on that. I think one of the things that we were able to do is really take a fresh eye on how we looked at remote work and specifically the use of existing office spaces. So pre-pandemic, we were pretty distributed, but it did have 2 offices, actually 3, 2 in the Bay Area and 1 in Santa Barbara. And obviously during the pandemic, you know, the remote side, the distribution of the employees that were working fully remote continued to grow. So we're able to take advantage actually of, specifically in the San Mateo office, our lease was up. So we really took quick advantage of an expiring office lease. At the end of 2020, we chose not to renew it. We gave away and sold excess furniture to employees that were nearby that needed it for their home offices. And we put the rest in storage. We moved into a WeWork on a really limited basis, a really small number of people using it. And we took this past year in 2021 to reevaluate really the needs, use, and intentionality, really, what I think is a key part of why do we want to keep an office? And if so, what's the purpose of it? And excited to share that we did find a nice little space in downtown San Mateo that we actually are moving into this week. And really, again, but it reflects some of the thinking and just reevaluation of, again, if you're using office space, what's the purpose of it and how to get the most out of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say I joined TextNow about a year ago. And when I joined, I came on board with the new VP of talent as well. So we had the fun opportunity to really redesign the process from start to finish. There really wasn't much existing. The company had seen so much growth during COVID, and it was the people really driving the growth. We're an ad-supported product, so lots of engineers on the back end and things like that. But one thing that stood out to me was the strong culture at TextNow and really how transparent we were and how could we put that into the recruitment process. We were founded in a college dorm room. We've only taken $1 million in funding, and this year we're hitting 100 million in revenue. So it's a really interesting company, but how can we position this to external parties? We're not a super sexy brand like a Facebook or whatnot. So we really had to take a breath and really build out the candidate experience, which was key for us. And it's really a crazy market right now within recruiting, as everyone knows, and candidates can be really picky. So we took the approach of we can educate our candidates, but also handhold them throughout the process, really offering them content around the culture, blog contents, making the interview process really transparent, providing all of our benefit details up front, and really wanting it to be a mutual thing for when we do get to that offer process, right? So we really had to define the process a bit more. We decreased the hiring times by 65%, which means we were filling roles really quicker. We've hired around 115 this year, which is pretty awesome without the use of agencies. And that's through really setting off clear guidelines with our hiring managers for kicking off roles, setting strict SLAs for each step in the process, putting mandatory interview best practices training for all employees that start at TextNow. Even if they're not interviewing, one day they might. And like Ashley mentioned, we built out a recruitment hub, we call it, on our intranet, which really showcases everything each person might need. So for hiring managers, interviewers, for people who want to refer, for co-op students, and really making that accessible for everyone. I would say the other thing we found was really building strong internal relationships. So working with our people team, which managed the benefits, our IT team, which ships equipment, and really being able to showcase some of these amazing perks that we offer summer Fridays, unlimited vacation, wellness credits, mental health, and really packaging it to the candidate, right?
Cool. And congratulations on that 100 million in revenue. That's exciting, impressive.
We're excited.
Yeah, that's great. I think innovation in the people space has been probably one of like the silver linings of COVID and how difficult these last couple of years have been. I think we all know just like how our jobs have just like completely changed and expanded. And there's, so much that's like really difficult about that. But I think the opportunity to innovate has been something that's been kind of like a bright light for me in the last couple of years. And I think like the thing that we have really tried to do that I've been really excited about at Heap is frame our move to a virtual first culture. So we made the decision to be virtual first early on in the pandemic. Like we were never going to fully go back. We will be virtual first. We will figure out what that means as we go. And we've gone through some different iterations. I think we're realizing now that there are as many virtual first companies as there are companies that are trying to do it. Like there's a different style for everybody as you kind of figure out what your balance will be. And I think as we've gone through that, this emphasis on experimentation with kind of just like a very clearly designed scope, time frame, how we're going to gather data, what we're going to do at the end of it. So we've set up this way in which we can fail big, and it's part of the process. And I think that like in my previous lives before COVID at different companies, I felt a lot of pressure with people programs and employee experience to like think of something that everyone will like, that will be really good, that will be successful. And it feels kind of bad if something falls flat or you have low attendance or it doesn't work out. And our CEO, Ken Fine, is fantastic leader. And he's been really supportive of this like experimentation approach. And one of our values is growth mindset, which is all about like learning from your failures. One of our other values is called taste the soup. And it's just about piloting, like trying it before you do something. And so I think being a data company and having the leadership that I had, it made it really possible to set up a process for continuous experimentation. And so like a couple of things that we did early on, we experimented with a no video Wednesday to prevent Zoom fatigue. Just like nobody for internal meetings gets on Zoom video. You just, do audio and turn your camera off all Wednesday. Didn't work. Actually, it got mixed reviews. So I think when we did the survey, we found out like half people were like, this is great, I love it. Half of them were like, this is awkward, it's not good for me. But what it did do is open up the conversation around when should we be on Zoom and when should we be off? And it kind of opened up the possibility for people to be like, I've got a headache today, or I need a break, or we're in a one-on-one, let's just get on the phone and talk. And so it opened up like some really good conversations about like how and when to use video, even though no video Wednesday didn't last. It was an experiment that we learned a lot from. And so I think framing that and not seeing that as a failure, but just as like part of this process to experiment has been really fun. We've also done, we realize that there's a need for cross-functional social connection. And I think we all probably realize that it's so easy in a virtual world to not meet anybody that you don't interact with day to day. So there's all kinds of folks at the company that if you were going into an office and like running into somebody at lunch or happy hour, you would gain all of these social connections and have a greater sense of belonging across the company. And now we're a little bit more like automized in our group, in our function, or just like the people that we work with. And so we did some focus groups early on to really figure out what we needed to do around virtual first. And one of the ideas that came from this was like a cross-functional pod of people is kind of how they framed it. And so we put this pilot program together called Heap Pods because our company's name is Heap, and one of our designers designed these like really cute little peas that are in like a little pea pod. So we have this like fun imagery around it. And we randomize people into cross-functional groups of like 6 or 7, put them in this group. And we're like, this is your pod, like get together, hang out. We did a kickoff at all hands. We kind of put some competition, some fun competition to it, and like had this like project that folks could do with like all these different categories. Total fail. And I think some of you are probably like, yeah, I can see why that would be hard. It was essentially Donut, if you know the Donut Slack bot, which everyone hates, I feel like pretty much. So I don't know. There's pockets of people who like it, but so many people are like, Donut's bugging me again to like go get coffee with somebody. This was essentially Donut for a big group of people. And the problem, like what we realized is that we had the major friction points for this program around time and energy it took to like schedule meetings and get together, time and energy that it would take to do the project. And we're moving really quickly, I think, in a virtual world. Like, yes, we gain back commute time and other things, but it gets sucked into other work so quickly. And so people just didn't have the room to do it. And there was a few pods that were like loving it, and most people were like not interacting. And so what we did is we've pivoted this program now, we've learned from it. And our pivot has been to carve out 15 minutes at every all hands. And we do a company all hands every month, and we're carving out 15 minutes for folks to be in their Heap pod and to talk about one of our values. So we've just rolled out new values. We'll do a value of the month, and basically just reduce all of the friction that we found in the program by carving out time at all hands for people to get together. And so we'll see how that goes. We're going to do that for another 6 months and see how it goes. But our hypothesis is that if we can make it easy for folks to do this, and we don't put the burden on them to schedule time or to make their own Slack channel or to do a project, that folks will actually enjoy being in a cohort of randomized cross-functional folks and have good meaty discussions about values. But it did take a couple big fails to learn where we were going to go. But if you frame it as like continuous experimentation is the goal in and of itself, then those failures are not failures, but they're just like really learning and growth opportunities.
I think continuous experimentation is really important as well, and being intentional. I think that's a theme that was across everybody's really thoughtful answers too, and not having all the answers, really asking for feedback from your team. Do you like this? Why do you like this? And really meeting people where they are. I do want to ask Austin Nelson around the feedback you're seeing from candidates. Are they asking kind of any newer questions? What are they kind of asking in terms of their next employer, if you will? You mentioned kind of the talent market that we're all into.
No, it's definitely an interesting time. I think that oversharing and hand-holding piece is really big. Like, how can you truly own the candidate experience and make it stand out amongst other employers, right? Because you want it to be the perfect fit, but it also costs to find replacements and things like that. So it's a mutual thing in the end. And we are competing for a lot of the same talent. I would say one trend we've seen is this flexibility idea, right? We're hearing a lot of these traditional companies are pushing back return to office plans. And it's like, well, we at TextNow, like even before the pandemic, we had what's called a work best policy. And basically my recruiters can hire anyone within the US and Canada, and we kind of look for the best talent where they are, right? Which is really unique and something cool to walk into, because since we kind of did this before the pandemic, it's like just another day, right, of remote working. And there isn't that expectation to enter an office. That being said, we have an office in Waterloo, New York City, Seattle, San Francisco. So there are hubs you can go into. We do plan events around those little hubs, but there is this flexibility piece, right? I would say comp is another biggie. We're seeing those increasing constantly. So that core like total comp number, equity is great, but is that real money? So we're seeing candidates push back on that a lot more now as well. And then I would say perks outside of traditional benefits. Every company's now hopefully offering the basics, right? But unlimited vacation is great, but how can we push you to actually use that vacation? We're shutting down for the last week of December. We did summer Fridays. We encourage everyone to take a mental health day once a month. Another piece is that our people team introduced and culture team, so kudos to them, but we launched this anniversary program. So I mentioned equity is great, but how can we retain employees a bit longer? So each year you're at TextNow, you're getting something, be it a gift card, or once you hit 5 years, I think it's an all expense trip for you and your family somewhere. And then at 20 years, it's like $20,000 to your mortgage and a sabbatical and a trip. So they just keep adding over time. Wow. And it really is, we had a model at one point called people over product over profit. Of course, that shifted, like our people are still core, but we're starting investing in our product a bit more. But I think that mentality is really interesting because it is working for us. We're making good money, but we do put our people first, which I think is important. So those are just 3 areas we've noticed.
I think those are
Oh,
I think you might have froze.
I'm like, I don't know if that
Okay.
was me.
especially the
I
examples
know.
around.
Oh, I think we heard her for a second. Christina, are you there?
You're coming back.
People always come back. We've learned from this last couple of years. They almost always come back. We'll give her a second. Internet is spotty. There we go. I think we have you back, Christina.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yay. Internet connection. I was just commenting, Austin, on your kind of answer around programs and policies. I think that even if it's an experimentation and they don't work out, you're sending a message to say, hey, we're trying, we're listening, and we really want to make this a place where everybody can succeed and do their best work. I do want to talk about retention, and there's a ton of research around when people feel like they are engaged at work and there's connection, they're more likely to stay. And again, innovation and doing their best work is seen in the output. In terms of employee engagement in a hybrid or remote first environment, what does that really look like in practice? And how are you thinking about measuring employee engagement? I'll pass to Ashley and then Bertina first for this question.
Sure. I love all the things that are being shared here. I love the big misses. We've definitely had them as well, right? Like that we begin to learn and iterate on those things for sure. And employee engagement and, managing in our hybrid or remote work environment, we're office optional as well. So remote first forever. And this is not something that will go away for us. And while we do maintain offices in different areas, people have the option, and most are opting not to go into an office regularly. And so that makes for a shift for us where we used to be able to check in with people down the hall and the break room, in an all hands, in a major conference room, etc. Now we run our town halls bi-weekly in order to make sure that we are able to give company updates and touch base with folks and so on during that town hall. We also will continue to measure engagement. And what we used to do is an annual survey that allowed for people just to give their sentiment about loyalty, satisfaction, employee engagement levels, and other type of specific topics. Right now, we are piloting a monthly pulse surveys based on your anniversary date. So that allows for us, regardless of where you sit in the world, regardless of if you come into an office or not, if someone can look in your physical 3D eye or not, to be able to listen to, be able to be, an employee is able to be heard based on their inputs into that particular survey. And we picked anniversary date based on all this various research around people tend to reflect, like I've been here 1 year, I've been here 2 years, been here 5 years, however long. And so they're reflective, they're perhaps more candid because they're reflecting, perhaps they're interested in really contributing to the workplace in which they've committed themselves for however many years, and allows us for kind of a continuous listening strategy and an always on measuring this pulse month over month with this smaller sample size, and then create in a more dynamic way. So instead of taking the annual data that can get old and stale, and then action plans that go by the wayside, using those monthly inputs and creating kind of shorter, more dynamic plans in order to help us to continue to have a in which we want to be. Getting a message that my action is unstable. Can everyone hear me? Oh, okay. So trying to do that. And to your point, Christina, about like personal connection, I think we've all heard the statement about like high personal trust makes high performing teams. The way that people feel connected to the business, the people, their coworkers, et cetera, helps them to produce more, be more engaged, and so on. And so we try to really foster that and cultivate that through employee resource groups, through fun events for people to connect in new and different ways, to not talk shop, to not talk business, to create some type of personal spaces for people to connect. And so we've got employee resource groups. We just hosted our virtual talent show just last week, but to the point that Austin was making earlier, we tried to host a virtual talent show in March and it fell flat. And we hosted it again last week, but we tried a different mode and it really worked really well. And so being able to iterate on things and meeting our employees where they're at, how they need to be met, trying to craft an experience all the time. We're doing now and we'll continue to do.
Great. I guess I'll go next. I mean, I think at Evidation, really our philosophy is making sure that we've put in the infrastructure, support tools, resources for people to really work from anywhere, and really helping them with productivity and effectiveness. And again, meeting people where they are. So for some people, it's working fully remote. For other people, it's I need to be in the office, not necessarily 5 days a week, but some optionality to go into an office if it's there. And a lot of people really just as a mixture of the two. And we've been fortunate to be able to give people those options and those choices. As I mentioned before, it forced us then to sort of reevaluate even the purpose of office space. How do we optimize and make that better? We've done things like offer home office stipends, understanding that the majority of people are going to be working from home, if not all the time, the majority of their time. We've invested a lot in addressing topics head on about meeting culture, best practices, Slack as well, dealing with the intersection of home and life, set up a lot of employee panels, have, again, that chance for employees to hear and learn from each other outside of their subject matter expertise. But it's a lot of folks, especially people who'd been working fully remote before pandemic, really had some good tips and tricks for people that were experiencing that for the first time. We also have been doing, the all hands meetings every 2 weeks. We've been doing a lot of regional events that are oftentimes employee generated. Like there's certain ones that my team will organize and coordinate, but definitely some of the best attendance in some of our regional areas where people are like, you know what, in LA, we're just going to find a day and meet together, which is amazing if you know LA traffic. And people came from all over to meet together, and we were happy to help support it in the background. And then again, lots of hits and misses of what's worked or not, especially trying to do virtual engagement. Some of it has been, the Slack channels don't, again, mixed results on that. Themed virtual events where there's a couple of people in our company really like dressing up in costume, support those folks. We did a story time at Evidation, so broke out the Phantom Toll booth in chapters and had people record it so that we had that recording. We did a musical power hour, dueling pianos. We did something with Fit City Adventures. They have this great dueling pianos group, and we had 100 people on chiming in and participating in songs and dance. And recently just did a holiday cookie decoration. And again, also trying to find the places we can do things in person, planning a company offsite in March now that we haven't had in the last 2 years. So fingers crossed, we will be able to make that happen.
I think those are a lot of really good examples of in-person and hybrid or remote first connection as well. Austin Sailors, I know you mentioned in your previous answer, just the importance of having a growth mindset, especially as a leader, of testing things out, experimenting, if they land, if they don't land. And there's been a lot of conversations around just the changing role of managers and really having conversations with folks about their life inside and outside of work. In preparation for the webinar, I know everyone shared their bios, and I kind of read in yours that you do have experience as a therapist. We love to see it, and an artist at heart. And I want to ask how that's really helped you foster a creative and inclusive employee experience, specifically at Heap.
Well, first, I just think I think it's fun, all the different backgrounds that people come into the people space with. I think I have one person in my network who studied HR management in college. There's just the one, and then everybody else has found their way in from a different background. So that's a good question. And it's fun to hear from people how they found their way in, and then how that's kind of influencing the way that they think about the people space and the way they do the work. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an artist and worked as a designer for a little bit. And I think you'll maybe notice even in my title, we frame the team at Heap as employee experience design, and we'll refer to it as just EX design internally. And the reason that we do that is because I really believe in the power of design thinking and the importance of really like getting into like your end users or your end customers headspace and figuring out what does it feel like? What do they need? What is the process really like? It dovetails nicely with our taste the soup value of like experimenting and trying things and really getting into it. But I think that it's easy to, I don't know, I think it's easy to get stuck on like the solution that you think will work or the program that you want to push or like the customer service kind of aspect of employee experience. And I think that at least at Heap, in my experience with my team, it's really been beneficial to us to focus the way that we think about the work more on design. And really, I think that's opened up the space for the continuous experimentation, for us like building a machine that will unearth new ideas and solutions and programs quarter over quarter versus just like focused on like, let's ship this one thing. So that's really come into play. And I've also just, you know, as a side note, I've pushed a lot of like artistic things. I'm excited to hear more. I want to hear more about what made your talent show work the second time, Ashley, because that is such a fun idea for me. And I've been trying to draw out the musical talent and artistic talent of others at the company, because I think it's just such a fun way to engage people and like bring their full selves. And then secondly, like I worked as a therapist before I came into the HR space. And I think that has helped in so many ways. I think it's like easy entering into the people space with that kind of understanding of interpersonal dynamics and having to like really sit with people and handle confidential information and all of that. But the thing that really comes to mind is empathy, and trying to really keep empathy at like the center of our employee experience at Heap. I also think of empathy as like the cornerstone of good design. So those things kind of like come together pretty beautifully. But yeah, like really leveraging my understanding of like the human experience and trying to get into the people's heads that we're trying to solve something for, and spending really good time understanding the problem. We're actually working on a process right now. We're working on building out a process for something called the Heaple wave. We call our employees Heaple, which is cute and fun. And we've got this customer wave process that our company does where they have very intentional meetings with a small group of customers. And so it's basically a focus group, but it's like very specifically designed to test a hypothesis. So we'll come to our customer, we'll be testing the hypothesis that like, if we change this feature, it would be better for you. Like that's our hypothesis. And we're going to spend an hour and a half drilling in with that customer, asking questions, testing for false positives. And like with the goal that we are the core group of people doing that wave meeting will leave that focus group with a clear understanding of like, is the hypothesis right or wrong? What do we need to do? And so my team is working on pivoting that process to be an internal process for our employee experience team, and being able to have a core group of my team really focused on a hypothesis that we're trying to test, and then get into the room with 7 or 8 people that we think will help us test that hypothesis. And all of that is about like the psychology behind those small groups and how you kind of pull out people's opinions, really like work those group dynamics, and also like try to avoid things like groupthink or like getting to a solution too quickly so that you can really come out with good data. So we're not there yet, but that's like a really exciting thing that I think is kind of connected to my psychology background that I'm really eager to do. It feels like a little bit of like a social experiment. And I think it'll give us like really good like qualitative data, which can be a little bit harder to come by at my company. We're all about the quantitative and the hard metrics, and that's definitely not my strength. So it's been a stretching and learning opportunity to be at a company like Heap. And it's been really fun to kind of try to find those ways to bring like the artistic and the qualitative, the psychological piece, and marry that with like the quantitative company that I'm at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that definitely makes sense. And again, looking at empathy-driven initiatives is so important as well. And having, being open to that feedback. I think everybody has really talked about the role that they have in their organization, and also just the product and services that are offered too. And I want to ask what unique role you think like your organization has in modeling really innovative people strategies in your industry. So what I mean by that is, if it's a goal to be like a leader in, attracting the best folks, are you looking to people in your industry as well or outside of it? Austin Nelson, I will pass to you first.
Yeah, definitely interesting area. I think just going into that people-centric and being able to be small enough to really think outside of the box and really go above and beyond. One thing I wanted to mention earlier and skipped over was just how important we use Lever as our applicant tracking system. And I own that, but some companies don't have like an owner of a software like that, right? But something as simple as like visiting your email templates to really make sure they're like educating, have content, meaningful, not just like the basic thing a candidate's getting from everyone, right? So just taking a breath and taking a few steps back, because once you implement something like that, it's gonna last for a while. There is some maintenance of like adding maybe new posts, or maybe you changed websites, whatever. But just maintaining that consistent theme throughout the entire process. And then once you do pass it to the people team, pass it to the IT team, they're educating as well about equipment and things like this. Because I've been at other orgs where it's just like, okay, we're handing you off here, and it's like crickets. And that's not what a candidate wants, right? That makes them think, or should I look for a new job, like XYZ? So really making sure we're continuing that handheld process throughout. And positioning us as a good place to work. We've started working with some external partners like Comparably, and working with our Glassdoor and trying to brand ourselves a bit more, which I think is important, especially we do have a good story to tell, but we don't have a big name, as I mentioned earlier. So how can we tap into some of these other resources, which has been beneficial for us as well?
Bertina, how are you thinking about kind of the role of the organization within your industry as well?
Sure. Well, Evidation's at the intersection of healthcare research and technology, and to contribute to the panel of like people with atypical backgrounds going to people. I'm actually a physician by training and have a public health background. So at our company, it's really important for our employee experience team to stay true to our mission, which is about enabling and empowering everyone to participate in better health outcomes. And that means we have to be thoughtful. We need to be evidence-based around COVID policies, talking about mental health needs, and also ensuring that we have a culture that's continually working on being more inclusive, promoting equity, and creating that sense of belonging and community across our employees, because it ultimately translates and trickles down into our products, the clients that we serve, and also the individuals that are using our platform. So definitely for us, it's thinking through that healthcare research and technology lens, and making sure that we're staying true to that in our mission.
Absolutely. Evidence-based is important, and data-driven, qualitative and quantitative data, as Austin Sailors was talking about earlier. Ashley, I know on our call, we talked about something that you piloted in terms of returnships as well. Could you talk a little bit about that? And also, if you could shed some light on how you made the talent show more successful. I know you were talking about that too, and I think your on-demand solution was really, really great.
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of things. I love what Austin was just mentioning about like recruitment marketing and employer branding, and just building up this presence to letting the talent community know about what you are able to offer to them. We are definitely cognizant of that. Our first and primary concern for us at this point and at the stage in our growth is making sure that our employees, our current employees are engaged, our current employees feel valued and welcomed and all of the above. And so we started to hear from employees that were going away on whether it's parental leave or to care for, to be a caregiver for anyone in their family and so on, concerns about when they come back, part-time work or need for flexible schedule, right? So the idea of embracing people throughout their life maturity, however, whatever is happening inside their world, and bringing work and their life together is really important to us. And so that helps us to make sure that our employees who are currently with us understand, how we value them and their work, and just their whole human selves in and of itself. And we found that as a brand that we are working towards continuing down that path, and like shoring up our employees' thoughts and sentiments in that way. And so Ziff Davis, our parent company, launched a program called Restart, which is a returnship program. And so it was piloted, has been piloted over the course of the back half of the year. And it just actually concluded. And so what the Restart program is all about is anyone who's been out of the workforce for 2 years or more, so any type of field, if you've been out of work for 2 years or more for whatever the reasons are, sabbatical, caregiving, etc., you are welcomed to apply for specific roles. And there's a 4-month period where when you come into the the Restart program, that you're going to be you'll have a meeting on your first day, you'll have weekly meetings with a buddy, you'll have kind of halfway point check-ins, you'll have an ending point of your 4 months where you and the company decide if this is a good fit for long-term permanent work. But it's really trying to help and ease the transition of people who have left the workforce for whatever reason back into the workforce in a new way. We all know about internships, but returnships, really catering to people that are not necessarily traditional student age, and have clearly had a background in X or Y or Z. And so they may have been an engineer, they may have been in product, they may have been, et cetera. And so we get to welcome them back on. And so we are participating in that returnship, the Restart pilot with Ziff Davis as a whole. And so that's been an exciting thing to kind of plan and think through and advertise our roles, to be able to target specifically partnerships with either the Mom Project or the Prowess Project, and these various companies that are targeting these talent communities, and be able to do that as we tap into untapped talent and potential and those particular communities. And as far as the talent show goes, we tried the talent show in March of 2021 via Slack. And so what our invitation was to our employee base was to drop in Slack on this day, whatever day it was, I can't remember what it was, but drop in Slack on this day, a 2-minute or less video of you doing something, or a picture of something that you created, etc. So you can have the opportunity to post in a small video or a photo on in this particular Slack channel on this particular day. At the end of the day, everyone will vote and see who wins first, second, third, audience favorite, judges favorite, all these various topics and whatnot. We got exactly 0 submissions, 0 in March. And so we did not do well during that time frame. We tried to plan for the asynchronous work the asynchronous work schedules that all of our employees have. We wanted to go into a place where employees already are. We use Slack very heavily. And so we wanted to try to cater to those particular kind of levers. We're going to pull those levers when we thought about how to facilitate this. How we facilitated it last week was actually over the course of the past 7 weeks. So we had a 7-week period where people were able to submit videos, photos, audio recordings, whatever. So we gave them 7 weeks to submit, and they had a deadline. And once they submitted it, it went into marketing black hole, and marketing did a beautiful thing, and marketing pulled it all together with a couple of kind of entry and exit slates, some wonderful background music. We had some MCs, and we actually played the video during our town hall. So then it took the place of our final town hall of the year. And during the time that it was playing, we used Zoom webinar just like this. And so the webinar chat, I mean, you had to almost put it on slow mode. Like, you wanted to be able to capture all of the chats, commentary, contributions, etc. And people were slacking each other back and forth and all of the above. So people who had never connected before one-to-one or even in a small group were reaching out to each other to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you submitted this ribbon dancing routine in your driveway, or your professional yo-yoer, or a wonderful baby shark baby dancing. And so there were a lot of different types of submissions, but you got to see your coworkers in new and different ways. You got to be introduced perhaps to coworkers that were across the globe, perhaps you never met, you never will meet. And so it was a much better and a more effective way. It was so lively and so dynamic. And even though it was a video, it felt truly like we were, experiencing a lot of things live.
I love that. I'm glad that you shared. I wrote down some notes because that sounds just
Take
fantastic.
the advice. Don't do it via Slack.
Yep, been there with the 0 submissions. That's always fun.
I hope that other people bring that with them to their organization too. We had a talent show at one of my other companies, and it was an incredible way to connect with people because people have really interesting talents, and it's great.
So cool. So cool. And we also gave out real like cash money prizes, good prizes. So
nice.
That encouraged people to participate as well.
That always helps. I know that we are wrapping up our conversation. I think that we could definitely talk about innovation in the people space for quite a bit, but we always like to end our webinars with a call to action for folks who are listening live and on demand for our webinar, knowing that folks are formal, informal leaders, culture conduits at that organization, whether it's in people, human resources, you're a manager, thinking about innovation in people and talent. What is your call to action? And this question is for everyone, but I'll start with Austin Nelson first.
Well, thank you for having me first off. And if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn or whatnot, feel free. But I would say my theme this year has been like, take a breath. I tell my team that, and just take a moment, double check things like XYZ. But I would say I'm looking forward to, we are off the week of the 27th and we're shutting down offices. And I'm just so happy about that because I'm like, we have a week to rest, and I encourage everyone else, take time. I think that's the biggest thing during this whole COVID thing that I've had to share with my team and friends. Like, you need to take your time because you're going to burn out if you don't. And 2022 is going to be just as crazy, if not crazier. So I would say take a breath and take time for yourself to celebrate those moments.
Okay, I'll go next. I guess my parting words are employee experience is not a one size fits all model. There is no magic bullet. I mean, you can attend as many of these webinars as you like and read all the books and blog posts on it. Ultimately, it's about knowing your company, listening to your employees, figuring out what works, and experiment. I mean, even if you just take one idea that came out of the call today, this webinar today, and just try it. Again, it might be a massive fail, but you'll learn from it. And so just keep trying. For the parents in the room, this is just like parenting, right? All the parenting books in the world, you got to figure out what works for your kid. And we do our best to figure out what works best for our companies.
I love that, Bertina. Yeah, in that vein, I think like knowing who your company is. So you can't boil the ocean, you can't do everything, you can't just like replicate. And you also, like, one of the things that I've come up against is that like your company isn't necessarily the company that you would start. It might have a different culture, it's different, like leaders are really involved. So instead of running up against like, I wish it was different, really knowing who your company is, a good place to start might be even the cons on Glassdoor. Like, what are there consistency in the cons? Okay, maybe we're a little intense. Could we lean into that? Could that just be part of who we are? So I think like knowing who your company is. And then the other piece I would just add is, and this is connected, like a way to do this is through values. If you can get really strong company values that your executive leaders are bought into, and then use those values to kind of push everything regarding employee experience, belonging, engagement, like if everything ties back to a really good set of values that leaders across the company are bought into, that is your leverage. And like I would say, above any other cool program or fun idea, if you can get values right and then use those as leverage across, then like you've got it made.
I could not agree more. And that is exactly where I was going to go with the value alignment. I feel like I often use this analogy, which is in the people function, we are the people on the sidelines of the business, supporting the runners that are producing the product, that are engineering, that are selling the product. And it's not that we're part of the business, we're the people that they are relying upon to have the Bengay, the water, the towels, the ice, we're the people that need to massage their cramps out. We're the people that need to anticipate that they're running up, if you run the Boston Marathon, Heartbreak Hill, and they're going to need an extra push. We are the people that are alongside of them, and they cannot complete this race without all of the support, the proactiveness, the responsiveness, and all of the above. And I think the only way that we bring forth employee experience initiatives, programs, all of the above that align to what our employees are going to need is if we understand what we all come together to value, what our core is, what exactly is aligned to the business mission, the business values, what the team has said to care about. And so we have to be really cognizant of our place in the marathon and our runners and what they need next and what they need now and what they're going to need at the mile 13 and what they're going to need at mile 25. They may not always know. So surveys, full disclosure, don't always get you everything. They may not always know, but that we need to be able to be responsive and react and responsive and proactive to their needs. And I think that's going to be really critical and important as we continue in this dynamic world.
Proactive, intentional, leading with empathy, an open mindset. Bertina, Ashley, Austin Sailors, Austin Nelson, thank you so much for being on our webinar this afternoon and for everyone joining live and on demand. If you have any questions around all voices and our belief in a psychologically safe work environment, please feel free to reach out and let me know. And happy holidays and have a great start to 2022, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks.